Okay, so I will very quickly introduce myself. I'm not the spotlight of today in any way. I would actually say that you are the spotlight of today, but we also have with us Gavin, whom I will introduce in a second. But for those of you who are for the first time in an offbeat session, I am Lavinia. I am a co-founder and a learning architect at Offbeat, and Offbeat is a learning space for L&D professionals. So myself and my colleague Ioana have both been internal L&Ds, and one of the things that we have noticed is that we tend to be the shoemakers without shoes. So we take care of everybody else's learning, and we sometimes forget that we need to take some time to learn as well. So this is why we designed this space, and we do all sorts of things with beautiful people from all across the world to support L&Ds in connecting and learning and growing. So one of the things that we are going to do today is that we are going to use the knowledge from the crowd. Okay, so all of you here already have tons of experience. So please don't forget to always use the chat. If it's, for adding a question, maybe you have some thoughts. We will ask you some questions as well. So just feel free to share your thoughts in the chat. I already saw that you know how to use that function. So thank you so much. You also have reactions. So if you want to wave, if you want to send hearts, if you want to laugh at something that, we're saying, talking about being a bit silly, please feel free to do that as well. Okay, and one of the things that we discuss a lot in L&D is how do we go from receiving orders? That's how it feels sometimes, right? It just feels like someone comes to you with a training request usually, and they expect for you to just go ahead and run that training and everybody's happy. But we all know that's not how things should be working, and that we should slowly move from that role to a more consultative, a more strategic partnership role. So we are going to explore today some tips and tricks on how to do that. And again, I bet you have a lot of experience, so feel free to share your knowledge. And without further ado, I will stop my share screen and I will let Gavin take the mic. Gavin, welcome, and thank you for doing this with us. And you're on mute.
Thank you so much. As soon as I started sharing, the microphone started moving around the screen. So hopefully you can all hear me now and everybody can see me okay. But most importantly, you can clearly see what is on screen, which should be the slides. And I'm not sharing my notes page like I was when we were getting ready to set up. Excellent. Thank you so much. I appreciate the fireworks. Okay, well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us and taking time out of your day to spend a little bit of time with us, to learn a little bit about what we are doing here and what we aim to do and how we hope to support you moving forwards in being a partner from the start with your clients, with your stakeholders in the work that you do as well. So as Lavinia mentioned, my name is Gavin Heryng. It's kind of an unusual spelling, but it's basically the fish. So hopefully not too easy to forget. And again, this session, you really are the spotlight of it. So as soon as possible, we're going to move to you and start asking you loads of questions. Again, please share your answers into the chat. I'd really appreciate it. But I'd like to start off just with like a little bit of a story, first of all. And it's a story about how I got here to have this conversation with you here today, and how I sort of became, in time, a partner from the start with the clients that I work with as well. And for me, it goes back to about 10 years ago. Now, I've been working in L&D for just over 15 years, but 5 years in, after 5 years in my career, all I did was deliver training. And when I say training, you know immediately the sort of thing that I'm talking about. It was dull, boring, corporate presentations where I would be given a slide deck, I'd be given a facilitator guide, and I'd be sent into a classroom in the business that I was working with, and I basically had to deliver exactly what I was told to do. And that's what I did day after day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year for the first 5 years of what I did. And I was okay with that. I was fine. But then after 5 years, I started in a new job. And on my very first day in that new job, my boss at the time was a guy called Rob. He had the brightest red hair you had ever seen in your life. And on my first day, he showed me around and he says, Gavin, what got you started in L&D? Why were you interested in L&D? And I thought about it for a second, and I like to think I'm a very honest person. And so I was very honest with Rob. I said, Rob, it fulfills my need to be the center of attention. And he was like, oh, fair enough. And that's, I think, why those first 5 years working in L&D, they worked so well for me because I was on the stage and I was performing and I was the center of attention. And that worked so well for me. However, one of the first tasks, one of the first pieces of work I was given in my new job was to train some call center employees. And the problem that was brought to me by the manager who brought this piece of work to me said, Gavin, we've got a problem here. These employees, they've all been here for several months, some of them for several years. They've all been doing this job for a long time, but they're making mistakes. They're giving the incorrect information time and time again to our customers. And so what we want you to do is train them again on the correct information to give and how to provide that to them in one of their telephone calls with their customers as well. Well, again, I was brand new in the job. I liked being the center of attention. I liked being asked to do things. So I said, yeah, absolutely no problem. And so for the size of the audience we were working with, we set up 3 training sessions, took everybody, a group at a time, into this classroom to be able to tell them how to do the job that they were already doing. You might already be thinking, I can see where this is going. So the first group that I delivered the training to, they didn't look too happy. You know, they were sort of sat there, arms folded, looking really miserable. But they listened to me talk and they answered some of my questions. And then by the end of it, I was pretty confident that they knew what they needed to do. So off they went. And that was really good. And then I said to the manager, the stakeholder who come to me, I said, okay, send in group number 2. So they did. And another group came in. And I got about 10 minutes into delivering my spiel, my presentation, the content I was talking about. And then all of a sudden, this one man in the group, he stood up. He was a mountain of a man. He was huge. Now, I'm 6'4". This guy was bigger than me. He was at least as wide as me. He was terrifying mountain of a man. And he started screaming at me. I was like, we know all this. We've done all this. We've been trained on this. The problem is not that we don't know the correct information. It's that we don't have access to the correct information. The information changes frequently. And we never have up-to-date information as to what we should be giving to our customers. We don't know what the policy, we don't know what the rules are, we don't know what the offers are. And so that session number 2, it ended a little bit sooner than the first one. And so I went to the manager and I said, the conversation we had, you said they were making mistakes and they needed training, but actually it turns out that they know it, but they've not got access to the correct information. And so when we actually looked into it and we found out really what the problem was, it wasn't that they didn't know what to do, it's that they didn't have access to the information that they needed. What it turned out was the solution was essentially a document. It was a document that could be updated every week or so with the new offers, with the new policies, with the new procedures coming through. And ultimately they were then had access to that as a point of need resource within their job. What had started off as being 3 long training sessions ended up being a document that they kept on their desktop, on their SharePoint rather, and it took about an hour. And the best part about it, nobody else shouted at me as well. So maybe you can relate to that sort of conversation where you've had one of your internal stakeholders approach you or a client who's come to you and they've said, Gavin, we need solution. Or they probably didn't say Gavin, they probably said your name. But we need a particular solution. They've prescribed what that solution is already. Now, in my case, as it turned out, really training wasn't that solution. That was a real wake-up call for me at the time, and it really changed everything for me moving forwards for the next 10 years, which really brings me to where we are today. So things changed for me. Maybe things can change for you as well. So I've already spoken for quite a few minutes now, and I want to give myself a little bit of a breather, but also give you the chance to contribute as well. So thinking about, that's a little bit of a story as to like the work that I was doing. And I'm happy to talk later about the work that I'm doing now. But most importantly, again, you're the spotlight of this. So I want to know, how would you describe the work that you do right now? So again, please, you should have access to the chat there. I'd love to see or hear what you've got. Let me see if I can load the chat up on my screen as well. So how would you describe the work that you do right now? Okay, Joseph's nice and quick in there. Contact center training, very close to my heart. I don't do very much of it these days, but for the first, yeah, about maybe 10 years of my career, that's essentially all I did. Okay, Melissa, managing multiple stakeholders. That sounds like a lot of fun. And I can certainly relate to that. John, you mentioned training for field technicians. Okay, that sounds complicated as well. Especially if they're going to be field, I'm going to go out on a limb and suggest that sometimes it's difficult to get people in the same location, potentially, to reach everybody when they need to. Oh, wow, these are coming through thick and fast now. Thank you so much. Kay, you mentioned L&D, talent development consulting. There is a need to partner with stakeholders they're not always familiar. Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes it's when you're internal, when you're in-house with an organization, you've maybe got the opportunity to build a relationship over time, to manage, to build those expectations, to build those processes. And so perhaps as an internal consultant, you have the ability to put those things in place. As an external consultant, one of the challenges can be you've got to do that educational piece every single time. Remind people, this is what we're here to do. SME wrangling, yeah. Herding cats is what I often think of it as. Training for digital IT, designing for any type of training format. And that's from Elsa, so synchronous, blended, etc. Sustainability issues based on thorough analysis. Again, you sound very close to my heart. I sometimes describe myself as like a one-man army of L&D. Tech upskilling and improving HR. So there's so many coming through here. I apologize if I don't manage to get to every single one of these, but please keep them coming through. This level of engagement is absolutely fantastic as we go through as well. So this is really, really important to know. It helps us to understand who we've got on the call today, who we're having this conversation with, and then hopefully I can tailor some of this conversation to you and the work that you do. So my next follow-up question to that is, that's talking about the work that you do, that you're doing at the moment. What do you feel is the work that you should be doing? Is there a gap there between what you're doing today, for example, and what you hope to do or would rather do tomorrow? Think about the impacts that you feel that you're having with your clients, with your stakeholders, and what you feel that the impact should be with your clients, with the stakeholders, with the organizations that you work with. Okay, so Seven mentioned in there, so where you want to be is actually providing performance support on the job. So that's different from what you're doing at the moment. Frank, like what you're saying there, so performance consulting versus training support. Yeah, absolutely. And that was kind of the shift for me, really, is for the longest time, I was just delivering training support. I don't want to say like just minimizes what we do. It is a valuable thing that we do for organizations, but we recognize, especially when we have those conversations with clients and stakeholders, and the dreaded three letters come up, ROI, return on investment. How does this provide a return on investment? We start to recognize it's not until we get to performance consulting where we can start to actually provide, or not provide it, but clearly demonstrate what it is. And that's great because we're going to talk about that before we finish. Okay, so loads of ones coming through here again as well. I really appreciate it. So Vince, you mentioned understand the disconnect and the gap between management goals and the L&D objectives. For definite, yeah, that's a really common concern raised by a lot of people in L&D. Like, how does the work that I do actually connect with the goals of the organization, with the goals of the teams? How does my work actually show up on the balance scorecard at the end of the week, month, quarter as well? Lindy, you mentioned that you want to focus more on learning strategy, not just applying band-aids, which is how it feels at the time. I'm sure I'm not the only one who can massively relate to what you're talking about there as well. So we've also got supporting colleagues to grow professionally. That's really important. I think that within L&D, definitely for some people, it feels like it's just a job. But I think for a lot of us, we get a real intrinsic reward from just actually helping people to do their job, to do what they need to do. So more consultancy about real practical needs instead of just sharing content. I love that. Performance consulting and support, proactive mode rather than reactive. Yes, definitely. Helping to support internal customers break down their goals, its knowledge and skills gap. maybe that's a bit of that educational piece we were touching on earlier, and also building commercial strategy as well, and more coming through again. Again, I apologize if I don't manage to get to absolutely everybody as well. So this is really important. We definitely want to have, I think what's coming through a lot there is recognizing that a lot of us feel that we are just sort of going through the motions in some cases. We are delivering learning support, training, sometimes in its broadest possible terms. That can be facilitator-led, it can be e-learning, it can be blended, it can be all these things as well. But what I'm getting from the responses there is that everybody wants to have more of a real direct impact on the organization, on what the organizational goals are, and the performance support that we've got there as well. So this is the big focus for what we want to talk about here today as well, which is that we recognize that in reality, the true role of a learning and development professional or an instructional designer or whatever term it is that you would use within the work that you do is ultimately, or what it should be about, is identifying performance problems in an organization and then helping to provide a solution that addresses that. So there is a performance problem, we recognize that, and then we design a solution or deliver a solution that actually meets that particular need. But the reality is often the case where we're actually just providing some existing off-the-shelf solutions, some one-size-fits-all training courses, e-learnings, whatever it is, to be something that is fast and cheap and above all, just done in some cases. And a lot of the clients and the stakeholders that we might be working with, that's what they want. They just want something that gets done. But we recognize that, yes, while we can deliver something fast and cheap and just get something done today, that's not going to address the underlying issues that exist that have brought those problems to the fore in the first place. We recognize that if we can address the root causes of the problem, and we can do that now, then number one, it's going to improve things for our clients and stakeholders, and perhaps selfishly for number two, for us, it's actually going to mean that the work doesn't come around again and again and again and again, and we're not going to have that dreaded conversation when it comes time to review budget, which is what was the return on investment. So what we really want to do is close that gap between what we feel we're doing now and what we are doing now and where we feel that we want to be, which is having direct, really valuable contributions, impact to the businesses that we work for and that we work with as well. So when we talk about being a partner from the start, that's really what we're hoping to do is connect with our clients and our stakeholders and explain to them that, yes, we are absolutely here to help, but training isn't the only thing that we can do. And so by being that partner from the start, we're going to guide them to focus on the goal that they're trying to fix, and then providing a solution that does that. Now, with partner from the start, there are 5 key principles that you can see on screen that we always talk about. The first one is that we acknowledge to ourselves, first of all, that training is not always the solution. And I feel like based on the contributions in the chat there, we can kind of leave that there. I think everybody's on board with this one. Yes, sometimes training might be the solution. It might be part of the solution, but it's not always. And oftentimes there is much more that we need to do to address the performance gap. The second principle is that we use language that focuses on the problem and not the solution. So I don't know about you, but even with my clients and the people I work with today, they'll often come to me and say, Gavin, we need training. Or Gavin, I want some e-learning. And I go, okay, tell me more about the problem that you're having. I don't say, okay, yeah, we can definitely deliver training. We can definitely deliver e-learning. It's, okay, I can definitely help with that. Tell me more about the problem that you're having. We'll get more into that shortly. We do our own research into the problem as well. So we recognize that in many cases, the clients and the stakeholders that we work with, they may not have been able to, they may not have time, they may not have the ability to really truly understand what is causing their problem to exist. All they know is that they've got a pain point, which is, if we go back to the story that I told earlier, our call center agents are giving incorrect information. And they think, well, it's about people, they're lacking knowledge, therefore it must be training. That's often the thought process that it seems a lot of clients and stakeholders have. And so we really want to help them to, yeah, okay, that's great, give us that information, but I'm also going to do some of my own research to see what I can find out as well. We set a clear business goal with our client as well. So there's a song, I don't know if you've heard it by the former Beatle, George Harrison, where he said, if you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there. It's great lyrics to a song. It's a great hook, but it doesn't really work well for an L&D professional. We need to know where we're going. We need to know the goal that we're trying to achieve so that we can plan and map out what that journey looks like as well. And the fifth principle here is that we want to identify the correct, efficient solutions to reach that shared goal. So how do we do that? Well, actually, I'm going to come back over to you. So let's talk about this first principle then. So number one, where we're talking about acknowledging to ourselves that training is not always the solution. Tell me in the chat again, when do your clients usually ask for training? Describe a little bit about the situation, the scenario when this happens. Well, Lavinia's in there nice and quick when employees are not engaged. Excellent. Do you also when they have a governing body on their back? Yeah, absolutely. When somebody's lit a fire underneath them is the way that my father would often describe it, but maybe in more colourful words. So Jen mentioned after a safety incident, oh God, that's the worst time, isn't it? It's like waiting until the bad thing has already happened. And okay, well, now we need to do the compliance training now the bad thing has happened to make sure that it doesn't happen again. Perhaps we should have done it as a preventative measure rather than a reactive one. So when somebody senior asks for it, yeah, absolutely. Somebody's breathing down their neck. When they perceive something is not being done correctly. I like the use of the word, Christina, there, perceive that something is not being done correctly. Suggests that sometimes even the stakeholder might not truly understand what is going on. Okay, so when the boss says so for definite, when the stakeholder has an urgent issue, yeah, do you get that? I definitely get that all the time. My clients will sometimes come to me and be like, Gavin, what we need this done, but we need it done like next week. And it's like, well, okay, cool. Should have come to me 6 months ago. Uh, Obviously, that's internal dialogue. What I say is, I'm happy to help. Let's have a conversation about it. So when things are going wrong, absolutely, new process or system being introduced. So when performance begins to wane, absolutely, I love all these coming through. So again, just because I want to be respectful of everyone's time, I'll move on. But I think something that we're picking up on here is that something that was mentioned in the chat earlier is that so many of these training requests come through, they are reactive. Something has happened. The client, the stakeholder has just noticed something, something's going wrong. And often somebody's breathing down their neck, whether it's a government regulator, whether it's a senior manager, whoever it is. So we understand like these are the times when clients are coming through and asking us for training. So let's have a look more then at principle two, which is all about using the language that focuses on the problem and not the solution. So let's have a think about the words that we use. So when that client comes through to us and starts asking us for training, what sort of things do we say to them? And then also, what sort of things do we want to avoid saying? What's your budget? Oh no. Oh no, Vincent, you scared me then. Halloween's been and gone. What's your budget? We want to know, but when's the right time to ask? Can you repeat the question? Yeah, for definite. Sometimes I'm guilty of that a little bit. Sometimes if the client is telling me a long sort of story in a situation, it can be difficult to focus on everything that's going on. Linda, you've got let's. Can you elaborate on that for me there, please, Linda? Frank, you mentioned about avoid using words that describe the solution. So class, workshop, video, e-learning. Yes, brilliant, absolutely. We definitely want to focus on that.
Gavin, I think Gabrielle, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, asked you to actually repeat the question.
Oh, got it. Okay. Yes, absolutely. So the question is, what things do we want to avoid saying or avoid mentioning to our clients, to our stakeholders when they come to us with their training request? They come to us with a training request. What do we want to avoid saying? What do we want to avoid mentioning? I'm so happy that is recorded for everybody to watch for all time. The internet forgets nothing. Okay, so we've got a few more coming through. Brilliant ones. So not going to work. Kelly, I love what you mentioned here. You avoid L&D specific language like learning objectives. Kirkpatrick at level 3. Yeah, let's speak in a language that we know our clients and stakeholders will understand as well. and K's, the X solution will solve the issue entirely. Great. Please keep those coming through. Like I say, like was mentioned in the chat there a second ago, this will be saved so we can have access to it later as well. Okay. So definitely things that we want to avoid saying is just immediately agreeing. Yep, we can do that. So sure, what type of course do you want, for example? When do you need it? This is a really difficult thing because some clients and stakeholders will really push and press for things to be delivered by a particular date. But ideally, we want the solution to determine the time that it takes to deliver it and when that will be done as well. There's always a negotiation and sometimes a trade-off that happens there. How long should it be? Yeah, it shouldn't be down to the client or the stakeholder to really determine what it is, but we still get it. Yeah, I want a training course and it should be about an hour. We'll do it. Well, look, okay, let's have the conversation and see what's going on. So where do we want to steer the conversation? Yes, we can help with that. What kinds of problems have you been having with X, with sales levels? What problems have you been having with customer service satisfaction scores? That's certainly something that we can consider. So we're never saying no. Okay, we're always being agreeable without explicitly agreeing with specifically what the client or the stakeholder is asking for. And I'm happy to help. This is what we always want to come across, that at the end of the day, we are not being barriers. We are not blocking what the client wants and what the client wants to achieve, but we want to just redirect them to a place where we know it's got a better chance of fixing the problem. This is what Kathy Moore always referred to as being a relentless marshmallow. So the idea that we're soft, we're flexible, but we don't really give in at the end of the day. So that's what we want to be. When we're talking about principle number 3, it's about asking like what sources rather can we use for our own research. So this is a question out to you. We know that we do our own research. So have a think about it. If one of your stakeholders, if one of your clients came to you and said, I need training, and we asked them, okay, well, tell us more about the problem you're trying to solve, where would we go? What would be our go-to sources where we can find out more information about what that problem is, what's contributing to it, and also what potentially might fix it? Okay, so I love the yes and there. It reminds me of what's the acting phrase that's used as well? Improv. It's an improv thing. Yes and. Okay, so we know that our subject matter experts, our customers, can have a lot of information. Definitely, we can go to them and see if we do things like satisfaction surveys, customer results, those kind of things. The audience themselves can sometimes know. Yeah, definitely. Sometimes we have a member or actually a member, a client or a stakeholder who will come to us with this training. But if they're a manager or a senior manager, then maybe they're not actually even that close to the job anymore, or even if they ever were. And so if we've got the opportunity to go speak to the people who are doing that job, which again, I probably should have done way back 10 years ago, then I would have found out straight away that actually it's not a training issue. We know what to do. We just don't have the correct information to get access to. So definitely really, really good point. Vincent, you mentioned there's some sort of network competitors, LinkedIn, Perplexity AI, absolutely really good ones there as well. Customer data dashboards management, yeah, for definite. You know, what we're looking for really is context. And sometimes when especially when we're looking at people for our source of information, then multiple subject matter experts, multiple stakeholders can help here. People who have vested interest because they ultimately have to answer for the performance, the people doing the job. And even when we're thinking about people doing the job, we could be talking about, yeah, somebody who's done the job for 5 years, but you know, like the old saying, which is, you know, we don't know what we don't know. So we recognize that some people who've been doing the job for a long time might not realize actually what they do to do their job. So even speaking to somebody who's been doing the job for a few months can be really valuable because in their memory, everything is still fresh. So really good responses there. And let's have a quick look. So lots of information on screen here as well. Again, you obviously have access to this information afterwards as well. But this is not even an exhaustive list. There are so many options available to us for us to do our own research to find out what could be contributing towards the problem that is happening here. And the first one that we've got there is just the conversation that we're having there and then with our client, with our stakeholder as well. They're already giving us really valuable information. but don't leave it there. Recognize that there are going to be other sources that we can go to get more context, more data, and that's ultimately going to make us better equipped to, again, address the root cause issues that are in there as well. So when we talk about number four, when we talk about principle four, which is set a clear business goal with our clients, in the chat, why is it important that we set a clear goal with our clients? Why not just say, we'll just deliver something? Why set a clear goal? Elliot, I like that. So the goal doesn't change. Because if anything, for anybody who's worked in L&D or instructional design for more than a few years will recognize that sometimes when you're working with a client, despite the fact that you've had a proposal agreed, you've got a contract signed, everybody's agreed at the start of the project, this is what's going to happen, things do change. And so having that clear goal at the start just gives us the opportunity to say, when they want to introduce a new thing or try a different approach or try a different direction, we can just come back to that goal and say, well, how does that get us closer to this? If you want to talk about introducing this topic, that's great. How does that get us close to the goal that we talked about right at the start as well? So the goal doesn't change. I love that metaphor there. Acts as a compass for the whole project. Yeah, absolutely. It becomes like our North Star. And again, we're thinking again, every time we want to do something different, change something, it's pushing us away, and we want to get back focused on moving north at all times, really, as well. So we can measure the results, absolutely. Scope creep, Gabrielle, I can very much relate to that in a lot of the conversations I have. Again, so how does adding that help? It's going to cause us problems potentially further down the line. So keeps things in scope, aligns with the measure of success at the end of the project. Yes, absolutely. It gives us a point where we can reach that and go, we're here. Has it worked? If not, why not? What was the difference? How did we get it wrong at the start? So brilliant answers coming through here as well. So again, lots of reasons and real clear benefits to setting a clear business goal as well. In that immediate conversation that we're having with our client, with our stakeholder, it helps to keep them focused, to help them to understand that, yes, absolutely, we might be able to help with the request that they're asking for, but make it very clear right from the start that what we're really interested in is fixing a problem and setting a goal for what that might look like as well. Also, doing that as early as possible, as kind of mentioned in the chat, it really helps with any future conversations that we have. So as we bring in other stakeholders, other subject matter experts, we can be really clear in our conversation and say, this is what we're focusing on. And anytime they start talking about something different, we can be like, okay, we'll make a note of it, but this is what we're focusing on for this for this particular project as well. Again, it helps us to get them to clarify the problem and the audience that they're working with as well. Anytime they want to bring something in, people, topics, content systems, great, fantastic. How does that help us to reach the goal that we're talking about? And it shows the stakeholders the importance of defining the action as just not the knowledge as well. So it was mentioned earlier about like Kirkpatrick and those kind of things. Sometimes like that's the earliest level that a lot of certainly a lot of the people I work with as my clients and stakeholders, they have attended like really basic training before, so they know about learning objectives and those kind of things. So they're really keen to say, well, I know how to write a learning objectives because I've seen them so many times throughout my career. What we want to say is actually, let's talk about the actions that people need to perform, the performance goals that we're talking about here, not just what people need to know in order to achieve them as well. And so the final one here, so principle number 5, identifying the correct and efficient solutions to reach that goal. This is going to be my final question on this topic for you, which is what might be the real problem behind a training request? Think about some of the projects that you've worked on where a stakeholder or a client has come to you with a request for training. What do you think, or what actually turned out to be going on behind that request? Okay, Jen's in there nice and quick. Tech gap, process gap, absolutely. Okay, let's see what else is coming through. Okay, so Elsa mentioned there's a new competence to be acquired, absolutely as well. Difference between sort of like knowledge and competency, right? Sometimes, you know, we recognize we can give people awareness. You know, the holy grail, it seems, of like all stakeholder training requests, our people need to be aware of ABC, but in reality, we want them to be able to do the thing as well. So reorgs, Vincent's talking about there as well. Dan had mentioned about process flows, communication flows. communication silos. So we recognize maybe there's problems in those areas that actually the stakeholder or the client is asking us to deliver training to address those particular things. Kelly, they're not sure what they need. Yeah, that's sometimes the case. I don't know what I need, so I'm just going to say training. Organizational culture can be the problem. Yeah, been there for definite. And sometimes, not always, it's a deflection for them. Natural tendency that training solves everything. Yeah, this is true and something I've definitely dealt with as well, and maybe other people can relate to it, is that sometimes a manager has their boss asking them a very uncomfortable question about why performance is down, and they say, well, they don't know what they're doing, the performance is down, don't worry, I'm going to deliver training, and that's just going to buy me some time. So we've got 99 problems, and a lack of training oftentimes ain't one. Sometimes training is the solution, sometimes it's more like part of the solution, but many times it's got nothing at all to do with it as well. And there can be many factors that feed into those things as well. So again, as a non-exhaustive list. So I want to be super respectful of everyone's time because I know that we're coming to the end of it. As you've gathered, I can talk and talk and talk and talk if you let me. But I want to make sure that we finish as close to on time as possible. And I know Lavinia's got some more to tell you about before we finish. So when we talk about these principles, and the 5 principles that you can see here, it's all about recognizing that once we've acknowledged to ourselves that training isn't always the solution, we can then start to consider really what the solution might be. We can start to think about what is the problem that we're trying to solve. We can focus on that. The stakeholder, the client can focus on that one as well. And it helps us to really drill down into that and start to understand what are the root causes that are contributing towards this problem that we're trying to solve as well. We recognize that when we do our own research into this one, it just gives us varying perspectives. We recognize that the one person requesting the training may not be the only person who can enlighten us on what needs to be what needs to be done and what is actually missing as well. So we have that clear goal in there. It keeps everybody on track. And again, once we identify that correct solution, we can start to, let me try again. Once we understand the goal and what's contributing towards that, what the root causes are for that particular problem, we can start to ask ourselves, well, why is that a problem? What is it that people need to do that they're not already doing? And what's stopping them from doing it? Sometimes it's going to be knowledge. Sometimes it's going to be skills. But other times there could be other things that we've talked about there, culture, there could be systems, policies, processes that are stopping them as well. But going through these principles keeps us on track and makes sure that instead of being an order taker, we are a partner from the start. So thank you very much for listening to me talk and talk and talk and talk. I will hand back over to Lavinia now. I know she wants to tell you a little bit more about what we've got coming up.
Before you hand it over to me, I think we still have time for one question. Gabriel, just for the sake of time, I'm going to read your question. If anyone else has any other thoughts apart from Gavin, please feel free to share them in the chat. But the question is, what if some of the core issues have to do with outdated, inefficient processes? It's painful to be tasked with training people in broken processes, yet getting stakeholders to agree to L&D poking at deeply embedded processes isn't an easy sell. What would you do?
Right. Okay. So first of all, it sounds like you're immediately really up against a lot of issues there and a lot of problems that you're facing there as well. So what would I do in that particular solution? In that particular situation, I should say. For me,
oh, sorry, you took a break.
oh, it's okay.
Go ahead. Sorry.
I was trying to sort of pick up the various threads there. First and foremost, for me, it's about being really up and honest with the stakeholder, with the client, that before we even start looking at a particular solution, that there are barriers here as well. So again, we're really helpful. If they've come to us to request a particular thing, a particular solution, that's great. We can definitely help with that one as well. But as part of the conversation that we're having, as part of the questions that we're asking to really identify what are the barriers preventing the target audience from performing the role that they need to perform. Some of that, again, might be knowledge, some of it might be skills, but what we'll quickly identify through that conversation then is what other things, so outdated policies, procedures, things that contradict each other can sometimes be the case as well. Conflicting, what's the word I'm looking for, motivations, conflicting needs of stakeholders as well can be a challenge there as well. And really, it's all about how do we try our best to get everybody into one room, so to speak, could be a Zoom room, and really identify what is going on here. So when we're talking about the barriers as well, we're not just talking about what is stopping the audience from performing the role they need to perform, but also what barriers are going to stop us. And by us, I mean us as the L&D professional, but also the project group as well. What are the barriers that might stop us from actually fixing the problem that needs to be fixed? And so by going through this process, by following these principles, by doing this research that we do, and having the conversations with stakeholders, with subject matter experts, we start to draw out where are there these issues with outdated policies, procedures, systems that don't work anymore, that are no longer fit for purpose. We can start to list, these are the barriers that are getting in the way, and make it very clear that, yeah, if you wanted to, we could deliver a 1-hour training session, we could deliver a 20-minute e-learning program, whatever it is, but that is not going to fix 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's not going to fix the policies, the processes, the systems, and all these kind of things. There's a saying which is that if you put an excellent employee up against a bad system, the system wins every single time. So we want to make that clear to our clients and our stakeholders as well. I hope that answered that question. Again, there's a lot in there, so I hope that's helped. I'm always happy to have more of a conversation on that if need be.
I would also add that sometimes if they don't want to fix the process, it means that that's not a priority. It's not as big of as a problem as they make it to be. If you don't want to fix the root cause of the problem, it means that you can live with the status quo as it is. And if I go in as an L&D and probably spend so many resources to try and fix something that you don't actually care about, why would I do that? So I'm a bit tougher when it comes to this. Thank you so much, Gavin. You can find Gavin on LinkedIn as well, by the way, for any other questions. But you can also find him. Give me a second. You can find him in our Partner from the Start Masterclass. This is a bit of a promo part, which I don't necessarily enjoy doing, but we have to. So we are running a masterclass on 27th of November. It's going to be for 3 hours. It's going to be highly interactive. We're going to have enough time to let you speak as well, have the mics off and actually hear from you. And we are doing all of this because someone else paved the road for us, which is Kathy Moore. She has done so much research and so much work with so many L&D teams and has set the fundamentals of action at work, of action mapping, and we are now officially certified action at work partners. So we are not just delivering this out of our, just because we woke up one day and thought it would be cool to do so, but we are following everything that she taught us over these past few years, and I will just leave here. There's a lot that we already started unpacking today in the masterclass. We'll make sure to go in depth in all everything that means defining, properly having conversations with your stakeholders to define the problems they have. And with the Partner from the Start Masterclass, you also get a 1-year Offbeat Fellowship for free to continue supporting each other, because there is this change is not going to happen overnight, but it will happen in time, and supporting each other, I think it's the best way to go through the journey. Thank you so much. We'll come back to you with the chat, because oh my God, you're every L&D's dream, I have to say, with the recording, with the presentation, and we hope that we'll meet each other again very soon. Thank you for being here. Have a nice morning, day, evening, wherever you are in the world. Thank you so much, and thank you, Gavin, for being with us.